Hello and welcome back to the True Crime Guys podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Michael.
We're back.
We are.
Took a week off. Feel refreshed. Fantastic.
It feels good. It's definitely better for us, this whole setup.
It is. We have lives, man. Michael's got 3 kids. I've got a 8-month-old maniac.
Right.
Burnt himself on a freaking fajita plate within the last week. So that was kind of... I realized, like, when you kind of, like, sometimes when you set up that you're not going to do something on a certain day, it seems like it ends up like you needed that. Like that day I last Friday when we would have normally recorded, but we decided to take the week off. I ended up having like a 24-hour like flu bug type of thing.
Oh, wow. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like everything was
needed the break.
Everything was in and out. Let's just put it that way.
I got you.
So, I mean, it would have been a mess trying to record that day. And then that night, my son burned his hand on a friggin' fajita plate at a restaurant. And
it's always something.
Not good.
Yeah, I had some friends in town too.
Yeah.
So,
what's up, Rex?
We're busy.
Regular listener.
Yeah, what's going on, dude? Thanks for visiting.
And but yeah, we found an awesome case that we've been studying for kind of like the last 2 weeks with a book and everything. And it's one that we're fairly certain you guys haven't heard of.
Yeah, probably not. We can only find like one other podcast to do it.
Yeah, and it's always that same damn podcast that does every case that we find. Like, let's say, yep, they did it.
Yep, they did it.
They're a good really good podcast, though.
Very good.
Yeah.
You want to give them a shout?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. It's like we done alluded this far. We might as well. But it's an all kill and no filler podcast.
They did this case. They're the only other podcast we could find that did it. But that seems to happen every time we find a case that we're like, oh, this one, I bet no one's done it. They've done it.
They are 2 very funny ladies.
They are very good. I didn't listen to this one because I didn't want to get corrupted. If I tell a joke, I want it to feel new. I don't want it because they already said it type of thing.
They're very funny guys. If you guys are like My Favorite Murder or you like our podcast, I mean, I think they're kind of in the same vein.
Yeah. British.
But, they're British. Girls. You got to keep up, though. They're quick. They're quicker than us.
Right. Quick-witted mates.
They are quick. Oh, and they're comedians, too, so that's not fair.
Right. That's not fair. We just think we are.
Yeah.
We just cackle like chihuahuas. And
right. I was thinking about writing like 5 minutes of stand-up one day, just seeing how it goes.
Dude, I just write down random stuff during the day, like the stuff that I think is funny.
Yeah. Do you really?
Yeah.
Where's this book at? Where's this notebook at?
It's my little notepad that I have at work.
You need to bring that. We need to read some of that shit. We'll do that as some bonus content.
I could think of one that's really like kind of gross, but I find it to be really funny.
All right.
I had a fart that smelled like my grandmother's refrigerator, so I wrote that down.
Which is what? Like, I don't even know.
Like old food and like mixed with like punch and
punch. Like punch. She's got a whole punch in there. Oh my god.
Yeah. So if you're a new listener, welcome to the show.
Go get her a box of baking soda, man.
Oh
Can't
man.
have a fart fridge.
Yeah. So that's the kind of shit that I write down when I'm driving around at work sometimes.
Nice.
I also had another thought the other day. It was like, why do everyone's miserable in life because they compare themselves to successful people? If you just compare yourself to like the homeless guy in the corner, like you're doing fucking great.
It's all about perspective, man.
That's all it is. It's like just keep thinking about people that are doing worse than you, and you'll be happy.
Right. So that's exactly.
We can't think of like the true crime garages of the world. We got to think of the lesser podcasts, and we're like, damn, we're kicking ass.
We're kicking ass out here. We're taking names.
Right. So this case, though, it's got a little bit of everything, man. It's like it's got some history to it. It's got some war history. It's World War II times. It's got France, which I don't think we've ever done a case on a French guy, a French person.
I don't think so either.
So get ready for some really terrible French accents.
We're not good at it. We might just ditch the French accent altogether. It may be something. Yeah, it may be like extremely stereotypical.
I mean, we studied this guy for the last 2 weeks, and we're still arguing over how to pronounce his name. That's how bad it is. Like I say, it's Petit. He says Patois or some shit.
Patois. That even sounds more French.
Patois. We'll just go with Marcel.
Okay. Yeah. But you better say it, Marcel.
Right. Well, let's get into the case.
All right. Fine.
dass eben doch dann einmal die Stunde kommt, in der die Millionen, die uns heute verfluchen, hinter uns stehen und mit uns begrüßt werden dann das gemeinsam geschaffene, wiedererkannte, wiedererworbene, neue deutsche Reich der Größe und der Ehre und der Kraft und der Herrlichkeit.
How do you think that great fair tunes and colonies have been made? By theft, war, and conquest. It is the law and the jungle always. Morality has been created for those who possess those that do not retake like things gained from their own repentance. It is the law and the jungle always. The law and the jungle always. The jungle always.
All right, our case this week. A guy by the name of Marcel Félix Petois.
Oh, you forgot Andre
Petit.
and Henry. That's also in there somewhere, I think.
Yeah, but those whatever.
Marcel, Andre, Henry.
It's Marcel
Félix
Petois. Petois. We'll go with Petois.
Yeah.
I like Petit. It's spelled Petiot, so who knows? And in France, everything's kind of like it has a jumbled up like you're mid chewing food or something.
Yeah, and then the narrator of our book that we read said it completely different. He said Petto.
Yeah.
Petto. Petto. Yeah, because I remember I was like, it's kind of like Petro without the R. Petto. So maybe he's right. I don't know.
It almost sounds like they're choking
He
when
got
they
paid
eat.
to do it.
Or like they're like choking while they're talking. That's German.
Oh, that's German. That's German. Yeah.
They
They sound all phlegmy sometimes.
kind of sound like
when
they
get
got like
angry.
spit in their mouth or some kind of a drink.
Yeah.
Marcel Petois.
The German language is not the prettiest, but they make really good cars.
Yeah. They made some cool. Dude, I want a Volkswagen bad. I've wanted like an old school Volkswagen Bug, like Ted Bundy style,
Super
for a
Beetle,
while
bro.
now.
Super Beetle.
A little 4-banger with the stick
Yeah.
shift.
Hell yeah.
Engine in the back that you can pull out with like 2 bolts.
A little Stinger exhaust.
Hell yeah. A Baja style.
Yeah. A surfboard on top just for looks.
Yeah, no, I don't surf, but yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Word.
All right, so yeah, this guy, he looks like a mad scientist.
He kind of
Almost looked like Albert Einstein or something.
He
Like
kind of was a French Einstein.
when you hear this story, if we didn't explain what he looked like, but we just told this whole crazy story of his life and like the crimes and the horrific shit that he did,
Yeah.
and like how smart he was and everything, if you picture what we're talking about, you probably would like draw a perfect image of him.
Right. If you also
without us
consider,
explaining it.
and also consider that he's French.
French guy,
Yeah.
in the 40s, a little older by the time he gets discovered for his crimes.
Right.
And just the picture, it's like sometimes, people talk about, you hear someone on the radio, you probably hear our voices and stuff, and then you see a
Right.
picture like, that's not what I pictured. This guy's exactly
This
what
is
you
exactly
pictured.
what you pictured.
Yeah. When you hear his life, you're like, okay, I got an image in my mind. That's him.
Yep. That's that motherfucker right there.
And we'll post a picture on Instagram and Facebook and stuff, I'm sure, when we post the episode. He was born January 17th, 1897. He shares a birthday with Michelle Obama, Betty White, Jim Carrey, Steve Harvey, Benjamin Franklin, Kid Rock, James Earl Jones, Maury Povich, and Little John. Pretty much. I mean, what else do you need? Like, if you had
That's a fucking all-star list
dude,
of
if you had to
celebrities,
send like,
honestly.
if you had to send 10 people from the world like to the alien race, like this is the best we got. That's,
Wait, what?
That's
You would send Little John and Kid Rock?
yes, it's a good mix of everything. Jim Carrey.
No, James Earl Jones, yes. Okay, Benjamin Franklin.
No,
yeah.
dude, this
Jim
is the
Carrey,
list.
Yeah, because Jim Carrey is so woke.
Can we swap Kid Rock for Eminem?
Can we?
We go with a different guy from fucking that area.
Right. No, you cannot. Birthdays did not match up. I saw these birthdays and I was like, I'm putting all these people on here.
Right.
All these people have to be on here.
Dude, they all have to be. This
They
is
have to
fucking
be.
epic list.
And there was other people who were like B-list celebrities that were still very famous.
Really?
That
What's going on with January 17th?
I don't know.
If you're a listener and that's your birthday, man, you're in good company.
You are very good. Well, except for one guy. But
Marcel Petois.
yeah, but the rest of them, not bad.
This guy was fascinating though. Like, as far as serial killers go, it's good company if you're into it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's kind of crazy that this guy's not more well known. His fucking nickname too. I mean, we don't even have to give him a new one. You know how sometimes we give serial killers like our own name, like the Pizza Face Disgrace. That was the best one ever.
Pizza Face Alaskan Disgrace.
I still sometimes just laugh about that randomly.
You're just sitting there writing it down.
All right. This guy, his nickname, he has a bunch, but the one that I feel is just it's perfect. Dr. Satan.
Dr. Satan.
Which I think is a character in House of a Thousand Corpses.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I believe there's a Dr. Satan in that.
Okay.
But this guy's better.
He's pretty bad. When you think about what he did and then who he did it to, and then the way he lured them in to do
and the
it.
time, the time that it's like
so,
he lived
so evil.
During the time of his crimes, it's during the German occupation of France.
Right.
It's a terrible time, and we'll get into it. But it's a terrible time for just people to be living in the area that he's in, and then he's committing these horrendous acts upon people that are already just in such dire needs of something good to happen in their life, and then he takes advantage and makes it worse.
Yep.
He was born in, I don't know how to pronounce it, Auxerre, France?
I'm sure you nailed it.
Auxerre, France. Auxerre, France.
Auxerre.
You know what's crazy is I think my lineage comes from France and
Yeah, mine too. I got a big part of it.
France and like Switzerland or something.
Yeah.
His mother had died at a young age, and his father had become a shut-in due to that. And so he kind of felt like betrayed by his parents. He believed that he'd been conceived by mistake and that he was probably illegitimate and didn't have much of a parental.
Wasn't he the oldest?
Yeah, he had a younger brother named Maurice who he always maintained a close relationship with all the way to the end.
Yeah.
His brother Maurice always stood by him. They were close. That was pretty much his only close family. Oh, no, he had I think he had grandparents that took care of him a little bit and an aunt that he would go visit and stuff. He was known as a very intelligent child, but he had severe behavioral issues. As far as the intelligent side, he was known to read a book every night. And he had hundreds of books on criminology and killers and stuff. So it's kind of strange.
And he was reading way above his grade
level. I think
level,
it's a little weird if kids are they just take it upon themselves to get into this stuff. I totally think it's normal. Obviously, we have a true crime podcast.
Yeah.
And everyone listening right now.
I don't know if I'd say normal, but it's more accepted.
But for normal, for adults, we get curious as we get older. I feel like it's kind of strange for a kid to be so fascinated in that. You know?
Right. Be fascinated.
I wasn't into this shit
right
until I got older.
No. If I saw the violence on TV, it kind of attracted me. I'm not going to lie. When I was a little kid, but I think every kid is just you're just curious. You're like, what is this?
Playing GTA, running people over and stuff.
Right.
Another thing that's abnormal from his perspective is he was also known to harm animals at a young age. Now that's kind of
oh yeah.
Well,
I mean, give some twisted examples because this was not regular harming.
Wasn't there something to do with smothering a cat?
Yeah,
I believe
he was. He was actually playing with a cat, almost drowning it. Mm-hmm. And no, there was a pot of boiling water. That's what it was.
Oh,
he was sticking its paws in it.
Right.
And then his mother caught him, and she was like, "You're going to learn to love this cat, so you're going to sleep with this cat tonight."
Good idea.
Yeah.
If a kid's torturing a cat in front of you, leave him alone for the night with him.
Yeah, good idea. Good idea in a dark room.
Right.
So that's what she did, and it didn't turn out well. He actually smothered the cat, but the cat got its hits in.
Oh, scratched the shit out of him.
Yeah, he's got bite marks and scratches all over him.
Yeah, dude, cats are scary. If they were, I was going to say if they're bigger, there are bigger cats. What am I talking about? It's fucking tigers and
But if
lions.
house cats were bigger, they'd fuck us up.
Oh, for sure.
Their reflexes are so damn fast.
Take on a lynx and see what happens. You're going to get fucked up.
When I pick up my cat and he doesn't want me to pick him up, he's just fucking all, I don't know how, but I'm grabbing him underneath the front paws, and he's still scratching me with all four.
Well, dude, because they're so flexible.
They are.
And then they've just got razor blades all over their
rubber
body.
band, and he's trying to bite me and shit. And I'm like, dude, just get off me.
Right. And you're not the only real defense you have is to snap their neck, but you're not going to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
I'm just saying, if they're scratching you, you don't want to hurt them, but they're not going to stop.
No, you're right.
So you smother them like he did.
Yeah, you just.
So there's a thing called the McDonald triad.
Oh, is there?
Bedwetting.
It's got something to do with
serial killers. Yes.
Right.
If you're into true crime, I'm sure you've heard of it.
Oh yeah.
Bedwetting, harming animals, and then arson.
Arson.
He had 2 out of the 3. He was known from his grandmother talked about him as a child later on. She said he had always been a nervous child. Mm-hmm. He wet the bed until the age of 10, and he rarely slept.
Yeah.
And so he was a bedwetter, and he was known to harm animals. Not anything. We never heard anything about arson. However, he was a kleptomaniac for his whole life. He was always into theft.
Yeah. Oh wait, let's talk about the bird animal right quick before we get too far from
the bird.
This. Yeah.
What happened with the bird?
I said weird. I said the bird animal.
The bird animal? Is that what you said?
Yeah, but anyway.
Let's talk about the bird animal.
Let's talk about the bird animals. I saw some of them today flying around. No.
Oh, we were talking about that before the show, about our terrible accents. You guys always give a shit, and most people love it. That's great.
Yeah.
But don't act like you guys in other countries don't make fun of Americans and act like we're all Southern morons. Yeah. Hey, let's go shoot some guns and shit. Woo.
Woo.
America.
Guns and hamburgers. Hell yeah.
Granted, that is us, but it's fine.
Well, hey. Yeah.
Guns and hamburgers.
All right. Anyways, back to the bird animal, bro.
Yeah.
All right. So he would take the birds, small birds, right? And he would poke their eyes out, but leave them alive. So he would carefully cut their eyes out.
Oh, that's next level creepy.
And then leave them alive and just let them walk around.
That is next level creepy. Just let them walk around. Did you ever used to catch butterflies and rub their wings so that they couldn't fly anymore, and then let them walk around?
Of course, because they told me that would make them not fly, and I was like, really? Let me see.
Yeah.
You have to see.
Yeah, I guess doing it once is fine, just for experiment, right? But then if you keep doing it...
Wait, how many times did you do it?
I didn't do it that much. I didn't want him to not be able to fly.
I think that should
But I didn't want him to leave me.
I think it should be a question on a job application. How many times did you ruin a butterfly?
It's a way of holding them captive. You want them to be your friend. You know what I mean? When you're a kid, you're like...
Yeah, sure, Jeffrey
Dahmer. Don't fly away. Don't fly away from me. I'm going to strangle you and have sex with your body. Oh, geez, this got dark.
This got off the rails.
Yeah.
Off the rails.
So he was also disciplined for bringing pornography to his elementary school. Now, pornography in these times, I'm sure, was probably pretty mild. It's probably like a girl in a freaking bikini or something.
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows what it was? So we're not going to give a lot of clout to that, but it just kind of shows that he was kind of like into being an outlaw type of thing at a young age.
Didn't he proposition a classmate at a very like an awkwardly young age, like a male one? He propositioned a male classmate to like it was just classified as perform a sexual act on him. Yeah, like was that in elementary school?
Oh, why don't we talk about the book that we read? Actually,
oh yeah, let's do.
Was that in the book? Is that where you heard that?
Yeah.
Okay, the book that we read was.
They glanced over it, but it was. I was like, whoa.
This book. We'll talk about it for a minute. Death in the City of Light: The Serial Killer of Nazi-Occupied Paris by David King. Great book, but it's a one of the rougher reads that we've done. It's very long and it's like a lot of French names. Like he brings in a lot of people into this book. It's very, very well researched.
Yes,
it's kind of hard to follow sometimes. Like in the midsection of the book with the investigation, the commissaire Massou, who was the lead investigator trying to track this guy. Yeah, it goes into a lot of like him interviewing people and stuff, and you're like, you start to lose track because it's all French names. For me, it's kind of hard to kind of distinguish between
because when the reader pronounces the names, he pronounces it in very thick French accent, so it's hard for us to even guess the spelling half the time. But the book was great for the backstory on this guy, which you can't find anywhere else on the internet. It's hard because there's also a lot of French articles. There's like a 2-hour documentary on YouTube, but it's in French, and I couldn't find a way to translate it to subtitles.
English. So the book was pretty much the end-all be-all for our studying for this case, and luckily for us, the guy, like I said, that wrote the book did an amazing job.
There are some articles that sum it up very nicely if you don't have time to read the book or whatever.
Right.
If you Google this book,
there is a lot of misinformation out there though. Like that I learned from.
But I mean, there's articles based on this book though.
Yes, there are. Those are the ones you have to find. But there's the common articles you run into. Like even Wikipedia is like so wrong on a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like even down to like how he killed.
Well,
people.
because the newspapers were just bullshitting it at the beginning. They were writing the story, whatever that people wanted to hear to calm people down because that area was already in such an uproar.
Right.
So.
But yeah, great book. It's like I said, if you like nitty gritty details of the investigating and all that stuff, and you think you can handle it, it's good. It worked out for us. I just kind of like skimmed through a lot of the middle part though. Like I said, the investigation, and like all the interviews he did with people and stuff like that. But it was great for the backstory, and then it was great for the trial, and everything. It
was also interesting to see like the. Like when you talked about how detailed it was interesting to see like maybe the quantity of like items he was taking from people because it kind of put it all into perspective a little bit more. Because like every time they would go and they would talk about a crime scene or talk about when his house was found in the end, they talked about like all these different clothes and toothbrushes and like all this stuff that just kind of puts it into perspective. It's like, oh my God, like all these people were here.
Right. It's very Bloody Benders-esque a little bit. It's a little bit it's a little bit H.H. Holmes, which we haven't done, but we've been requested a million times.
Right.
But I feel like this is kind of like an unknown H.H. Holmes type of case. It really is.
I agree.
This guy had a murder castle, kind of in a sense. It wasn't really a castle, but it was like a large mansion that was formerly owned by a princess. I mean, we'll get into all this stuff, but that's what like really attracted to me this case when I just kind of like found something on it, like a little article on it. I was like, holy shit, this guy had a fucking like a murder mansion.
And his childhood's pretty funny too.
And like a custom, he had a custom room built into it and all the stuff we'll get into. But it's a little bit H.H. Holmes. It's a little bit Bloody Benders. And it's Nazi occupied France. And so it's like, it's just so many cool things about this case.
Yeah, there is.
Interesting stuff. And so like the book also talks a lot about France at this time. It talks a lot about, the World War II and how, the Germans kind of steamrolled France during that time because they were ultimately being kind of a war buff and being into World War I know how many people France lost in World War I and how like they were still so debilitated from World War I that they couldn't put up much of a fight against the Germans in World War II.
Right.
And so really quickly into World War II, France got just kind of steamrolled and they were pretty much just occupied by Germans everywhere. And so, but I mean, that's kind of later into the case. At this time, we're still back in the early 1900s with him as a child. So we'll get into that stuff. When he was so we talked about how he was disciplined for the porn, bringing that to school. Also, his school antics, he kept continually bringing a gun to school and showing it off to classmates.
Yeah.
And at one point, he even fired the gun into the ceiling during class and was...
Reportedly during a history class.
Right.
Like, what? I wonder why. Like, I gotta know what that setup's like. Like, how do you just shoot it?
You never done a desk pop, bro?
Was he sitting there, right? Was he sitting there like raising his hand? He just couldn't get her attention. He's like,
right.
all right, bitch. All right.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, do I have your attention now?
Right. Can I answer the question?
Can I go to the bathroom? Thank you.
Right. When he was about 17, and this was 1914, he was diagnosed as mentally ill. I wonder why, as we talked about, the bedwetting, the animal cruelty, the popping off desk pops in class. This diagnosis also came in part due to him being arrested for stealing other people's mail, and the way that he did it is pretty comical. He used a fishing pole with adhesive at the end to fucking get people's
like
mail.
Some fucking Bugs Bunny shit,
right? I'm just like, when he said he stole mail, I'm like, okay, he walked up to mailboxes, took mail. I'm like, I don't know how.
No.
What kind of mailbox is he fishing a damn? I don't understand. I'm confused.
I don't know, but didn't his dad work for the postal
you know what?
service?
It was probably those big mailboxes in the street where you can't reach in. He probably like could open a little flap and then
going through the.
That's what it was.
Yeah,
that's what
true.
It was.
But wasn't his dad working for the post office at the time?
Yeah, I think he was.
He had a family member. I'm pretty sure it was his dad.
Yeah.
So yeah, his dad did not take kindly to that.
And so when he was determined to be unfit to stand trial for the mail theft and was released. He was then expelled from school and had to finish his education at a special academy in Paris in 1915 with the help of his grandfather studying and whatnot. He then, in 1916, joined the French army in the middle of World War I. We just kind of alluded to World War I and how horrific that was.
Right.
And France lost so many fucking people in World War I, man. It was just crazy.
Right.
And so he fought in the trenches on the Western Front. And it was said one of, like, I guess the people that was in his regiment was asked later about his times in the war. And during this time, his regiment was known and estimated to be losing about 100 men per minute. And so he's in the trenches. He ends up getting gassed by the Germans, which we've talked about that in the past. I believe Jim Jones's adopted father or his real father, whatever, was kind of the same thing, gassed in World War I.
That's right.
And it just, you have to wonder how that affected Marcel moving forward, being gassed. And we talked about also that the lack of treatment that the soldiers in this time got for PTSD and for their wounds that they suffered in battle.
I mean, you definitely can't blame it on that with all that precursor childhood stuff, but I'm sure it wasn't anything good. It definitely wasn't a positive in his life. Yeah.
In 1917, while in war, he was badly wounded and started showing signs of a mental breakdown. However, there's kind of some controversy as far as the wound that he suffered.
Yeah.
He had been supposedly wounded by a hand grenade, which resulted in a 3-inch gash on his foot. And there was a lot of speculation about whether that was self-inflicted in order to get out of war. Because it was just kind of strange that a grenade comes in and it only like gashes your foot.
Right.
So I guess someone that was like at war with him said that they suspected that he might have used some kind of a pipe and dropped a grenade down in it.
Yeah, and then held his foot in front of the pipe and let it explode just on his foot. Because they said, because the explosion and the shrapnel would have went up.
Right.
It would have got his whole side of the body. Not just his foot. That's kind of odd.
Right. He was hospitalized and then later arrested for stealing army blankets and other various supplies. We talked about how he was a klepto. At this time during war, they talked to one of his comrades that bunked with him.
This quote, man.
Oh yeah, I have a quote because he was known for just going through his fellow soldiers' stuff. Like he acted like ownership was not really a thing. He was kind of like socialist views in a sense. Like he's like, oh, everybody's stuff's everybody's.
And he's like, does that I can take it?
And the guy asked, does that apply to your stuff? And he said, yeah, everything is just fair game.
Yeah.
And so when confronted by a comrade at war during this time, there's a quote from him. He said, "Morality has been created by those who possess, so that you do not retake the things gained from their own crap hides." I don't know. I try to look that word up, but I kind of get the gist of it. It's by their own sins in a sense.
So you don't take their shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that quote kind of it makes
a lot of sense.
It really does.
Yeah. I was listening to that quote riding down the road the other day, and I was just looking at everybody's stuff, and I was like, all of us believe that all of our shit is just safe. Like on a, typically. I mean, if your car gets broken into, you're a little on edge for a while. Right. But we as a society, generally, we feel pretty
protected.
Safe. We're riding and we're like, this is my car. It's going to be here when I come back out. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case. Somebody could just take your stuff.
Yeah.
And you got to be like, there's laws, obviously.
Right.
But
in this time,
it's is that what we were destined to be as humans?
Right.
I know it's another conversation, but
it is.
It's just tricky when you just look at all the stuff that we've created, and then the people on top they kind of put these rules and laws in place, and they do have the most things.
At the same time, I'm kind of glad because I don't want a world where everything is fair game.
Because me and you, like we said earlier, it's all about perspective. We're looking at the homeless, and we're like, hey, don't come in our home. Don't take our shit, bro.
Well, it's either that outlook like he's talking about, where the people that own it, you know, they're protecting that, or it's the Panzram way, where it's might makes right, and it's like the fucking scariest person's just going to own everything. That's just how it's a slippery slope from one to the other.
You can't have Marcel without Panzram if you live in that world.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So he was then released again by reason of insanity, and despite his mental state, he was returned to the front of war, like we talked about. They were, you know, they really didn't try to rehabilitate people during this time. It was like war was so out of control. World War I was just, they were just a meat grinder. They just throw bodies. That World War I was like the ultimate human experiment, where they were just, it was like not a matter of who was the better army. It was who could bring the most to battle. It was a matter of who could expend the most lives. During that time.
They were putting anybody
France
out there.
was losing millions of people. We talked about 100 per minute type of thing. That's what it came down to. Because that was like the first war where it was like real machine guns and stuff against humans. It was kind of an experiment going on.
Right.
If you want to learn more about World War I really recommend listening to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. He had a 5-part series on it. What was the series called? Blueprint for Armageddon, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, listen to that if you're into World War, if you want to learn more about World War I and hear how horrific it was. But that was like when he was 17 and what he was dealing with. Right. And granted, he already had some issues going into it, and I'm sure this didn't help. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, you know, it's weird that it looks weird saying like, oh, he suffered from a mental breakdown or whatever, and then he harmed himself, and then they were like, just get back out there. But you got to remember, like this time. That was light because most of these guys were killing themselves. Yeah. A lot of these guys were just offing themselves in the trenches. I mean,
guys were literally going insane. They went from like, this guy's already kind of crazy going into it. I mean, we talked about all of his past, but like you had completely normal people that went into this war, and by like a year in, they had completely lost their minds because they're in a trench 24/7, surrounded by bodies of their friends, and the bodies are rotting. Yeah. And it's just, you can't imagine the conditions they were under.
If you're not dying from getting shot, you're dying from disease.
And they were just pushed to the front. It's like if you tried to like get out by saying that you were losing your mind or whatever, they would execute you sometimes. You know, it was like that type of mentality.
Yeah. Well, they needed everybody.
And the shelling that was going on, the concussion from the shells that were being dropped on these trenches and near these guys, it was constant like blows, like getting punched in the head. Like the concussion from that was literally making these people go insane. Yeah,
it's amazing he had anything left from this war. Like, Like really, it's amazing.
And during the war, he was being bounced around from being mentally tested and stuff, and then they would basically say, okay, you're good to go back to the front lines, fight again, somehow survived this, and then he was in and out of mental institutions and then also back into war again.
It really makes you wonder how someone like him with his views survived out there. Like who you know what I mean? I feel like he probably took advantage of his comrades.
I don't imagine that he was fighting vehemently. I think he was probably the guy that was just more in survival mode, probably just hiding in the trenches and not helping out his comrades very much.
I can't see him getting out there and dishing out some cover fire. I just can't see it, man.
No, I don't either. I think he was more busy digging through his fucking friends' stuff.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Looting their dead bodies.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him at all, man.
No. He was eventually discharged for abnormal behavior, and he would end up receiving, at first they would actually give him 100% military pension for his mental disability.
It was discounted at first, and then when they found out
it was 100% right away. Well, no, I think you're right. I think it was like 50%, then it went up to 100%, and then it went back down to 50%.
Right.
And then all the way up until like him on trial for murder later, he was still receiving a monthly pension from the military for mental disability.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think that he would end up becoming what he becomes because he becomes a very successful doctor.
Yeah.
And even beyond that, which we'll get into shortly.
Right.
His mental illness was overlooked, and he was fast-tracked into an accelerated educational program for vets. He ended up going to college. He was accepted into medical school and obtained his medical degree in 1921, just 8 months after leaving the Army.
Yeah, well, I mean, what did it take to be a doctor then? I mean, like, what do you need?
He went to the
stethoscope.
He went to the University of Paris.
One of those mirrors on your head.
Yeah, you just gotta look. You just gotta look the part, right?
Like a lab coat, maybe. I don't know.
He looked like a mad doctor, so I mean,
have some bandages on hand.
He had to look down, so that's all that matters, right? He would end up opening his own small practice in a small town called Villeneuve. That's probably butchered
Villanueva.
that. So if you live there, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's a small town. It was a small town. He kind of chose this town for a reason because it was very small, and there was only 2 doctors that were both elderly that were working there, and he used that to his advantage. He was always very opportunistic.
Right.
Even in times where you shouldn't be, like World War II, he really took advantage of World War II and bought a bunch of properties, which we'll get into.
Oh, yeah.
But he moves to this small town with 2 elderly doctors and immediately starts putting out advertisements, which was really looked down upon at the time.
Right.
He starts like putting out ads in like the paper and stuff like that.
He's putting them out like politically though. Like he's downing these other doctors and being like, "Hey, look how young I am. I'm on the I'm on the cutting edge of medicine.
Those old fogies don't know how to fix you.
Right,
I got this."
He's 25 years old at this time, by the way.
Yeah, 25 years old, opens his own practice, and becomes immediately very successful. He became known as the People's Doctor. And yes, we took the apostrophe out for Jim Jones' sake. He was known as the People's Doctor because he was known to help former veterans of the war that he was in. Yeah. And he would, any like elderly people that needed assistance, if they didn't have money to offer, he would a lot of times supposedly help them out for free small donations or gifts from them. Like he would take like jewelry or whatever they could offer him.
Yeah.
He would take, but
he was also signing them up for public assistance, like you said, so he was getting paid double. He was still getting all the
I didn't
fees.
say that yet. He was.
Oh, I thought you said that already.
No, so he was known as the People's Doctor because he was supposedly helping these people out, and he was so selfless, and like he was doing it for the love of it, but he was unknowingly on their behalf signing them up for public assistance and taking their checks from the city.
Right.
And they had no idea. And so he's going around taking like whatever these people can give him. Yep. Some can pay, some can't. And then he's also signing them up for that and taking those checks.
Some people might call that double dipping.
Double dipping. Yeah, he's double dipping. So we talked about he has no morals as far as theft and all that stuff. And just seemed to like not have any morals.
Oh, the jungle man all the time, right?
But
he said?
Yeah. But he put out a great public appearance to everyone, much like many of these serial killers we study. You know?
There was
that's like such a common thing where like they're just known publicly to be this great person.
Well, what's funny is
John Wayne Gacy, for instance.
Oh yeah, right. One of the things that like got him this huge following was the way he was able to pinpoint people's symptoms. And you hear the theory about how he was able to do that with the microphone in the waiting room?
Very Jim Jones-esque.
Very Jim Jones. That's exactly what I thought.
Right?
I was like, he's listening to people's conversations, and then when he calls them back, he already has an idea about,
Yeah, so then they're talking about how they have a severe headache, and then he comes back, I can tell you have a severe headache.
Yeah, I could tell.
I can see it in your eyes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Are you constipated? Person's in the waiting room. I haven't taken a shit for a week.
Yeah. I feel like things aren't flowing freely for you.
Are you a bit backed up?
I'm getting a vibe from you, like you need to shit.
That's going on at this time, and he's becoming very successful. And then he decides at a certain point that he's going to run for public office under the Socialist Party, in which he does this big successful campaign and ends up winning by a landslide and is elected mayor in 1926 at 30 years old of this town of Villeneuve.
Yeah.
So he's mayor.
Yeah.
This guy's mayor.
At your age.
Ends up becoming one of the worst serial killers. I know, right? I'm 30,
This guy's fought in a world war.
Fuck.
He's
been gassed. He's tortured animals.
He's experimented on people. He did a desk pop already. Okay.
I haven't done a single desk pop, man. What am I doing with my life?
Desk pop, Lauren.
Yeah. So he becomes freaking mayor, man. It's so crazy. Yeah, and we talked about how the war is giving him a pension for being mentally unstable.
Still, and yet he's getting all this.
Yeah, he's been in and out of medical.
Talk about double dipping,
mental
bro.
institutions.
This is crazy.
Yeah, dude, it's just this guy's a world wonder.
He must have been extremely charismatic.
Yes, smart. I mean, we really haven't really talked about how smart this guy was.
Yeah.
He was truly. I mean, he goes right through medical school after being gassed and all this stuff and fighting in the trenches.
That was one thing that was consistent through every person that was interviewed.
Yeah,
Smart,
I'd say clever,
intelligent.
even more clever than smart.
Yeah.
like just knew how to manipulate. That's one of the best. That's probably the ultimate serial killer trait, right? Is manipulation.
Manipulation, yeah.
Cleverness and like knowing
charisma, maybe
knowing how to tell people what they want to hear. Mm-hmm. This guy seemed to be the ultimate at that.
Yeah.
So he gets elected mayor. And then around this time, he meets a woman named Georgette, who would soon become his wife.
Right.
Then in the next year, but in the meantime, he begins cheating on her and having an affair.
I feel like the marriage to her was mostly political, anyways, because of who her father was. He was like a very wealthy butcher.
Well, yeah, like you said, this guy's manipulative. So like anything that can help him, you can make that case for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's already having an affair,
right?
He hasn't even been with her that long. He's not married yet.
Exactly.
He's having an affair with a woman named Louise Delavieux. she was the mother of a patient of Marcel's, and this is believed to be his first murder. She mysteriously disappeared and was eventually wrote off as a runaway.
Yeah, he definitely killed her.
And I don't think her body was ever found.
But was she the one that?
But her connections to him, and then they let her find out how he was, and like it seems like in the early days, people that kept disappearing close to him, but that no one truly suspected him because they didn't know him as a murderer yet. He was known as the people's doctor, and the mayor. Who's going to think the mayor's going to be murdering people?
Exactly. Was she not the one that he put in the trunk though, and then the trunk was later found in the local river?
Yeah. See, there's
not. They couldn't confirm that it was the same trunk.
What was that river called? Like the River Ain or something like that? There was a river that these bodies were during this time while he's practicing as a doctor.
Right.
These bodies are popping up near this river. I think it's called the River Ain.
Yeah.
And they've got all, you can tell they've got the markings of the same person, and that person is definitely some sort of a physician.
Exactly.
Because of the way that the bodies were taken apart meticulously, and it was like the average person could not do this. This was used with meticulous scalpel. Like I believe the faces were cut completely off from the skin, from the forehead to the chin, and one cut was removed.
There were times when they said that they found pieces of skin that was like an entire covering of a leg.
Yeah,
without anything inside of it.
Yeah,
and they could tell that
the fingerprints were destroyed in all of them. On the bodies. The bodies would either have the fingerprints cut off, or they would be ground down to where you couldn't identify the person.
Yeah.
And also, a common thing that was found in these was stab marks from some sort of a sharp utensil in the thigh, the right thigh, and that was later,
i.e., a scalpel.
I.e. a scalpel, and Marcel himself even later said that that's the markings. He tried to act like, I believe this was one of my students, one of his underlings, that may have been killing these people because it's the marking of something he taught them, which is crazy to admit this. But he said that when you work on a cadaver, a lot of times, which is super creepy if people still do this, but something common for people who work on like a cadaver and they're cutting into them and stuff is to use the thigh as a means to like hold their scalpel, so they would stab the scalpel into the thigh rather than setting the utensil on the table. Yeah, so they'll just stab it into the thigh to hold it so that it doesn't like accidentally stab them if it's just laying on the table or whatever, doesn't contaminate anything. I'm like, that is just so creepy.
Oh,
it's just sticking out of the thigh.
Like a fucking pin cushion.
Eating a sandwich, back to work.
Yeah, right. Lay the sandwich on the other thigh.
Right. God. Yeah, so these bodies are popping up in the river. I believe there's a River Ain in the town where he's at, in France, this river that runs through. And that woman, Louise, was suspected to be his first killing, but I don't think he was later convicted of it. I think they just kind of attributed it to him off the books because it just made too much sense.
Right.
Also, another patient who was accusing Marcel of being involved with Louise's disappearance also mysteriously died. So
no way. That's crazy. They probably went swimming together.
Right. I don't know. He liked to use other means other than drowning.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know.
That'd be too boring for him, I think.
Oh, well, yeah. That wouldn't. Well, you can't do any experiments on just drowning people.
Yeah. It's believed during this time, Marcel has developed a habit of abusing narcotics, and he's embezzling money from the town. He's got some sketchy business practices he's prescribing way too much drugs to customers of his as a doctor, and like people are questioning like how much these people are coming to get their prescriptions, and it's like, why are you prescribing this person this much? This is like, this could kill a person. And he's like, don't question my practices. I don't go off normal, I'm trying to heal these people.
Like there was one instance where he prescribed like a pain medication to a child, and it was like more than an adult man could handle.
Right.
And then when somebody brought it up and he was like,
oh, his quote was so creepy what he said.
Yeah, he said something like, is this child not a burden to their parent with this sickness?
Insinuated that the kid would be better dead.
Right, exactly.
And he prescribed the dose that would kill him.
That was his cure, just to kill him.
Right. And he actually ended up on trial soon after this for a woman's death for she was a drug addict and was getting her stuff from him. He basically became a drug dealer through the means of a doctor.
He was also performing illegal abortions.
Yeah.
But what was crazy, what irritated me about this time was the fact that he was almost untouchable and he knew it because
he was the mayor.
He was the mayor,
people's doctor.
But it was more so because of his mental disorder. I'm like, wait a minute. So this guy is mentally unstable, and he's unfit to stand trial. Okay, so you just don't try him?
Right.
I don't see.
So you just let him get away with everything.
I don't get. There's something else. There's another piece of this puzzle that's somebody's pockets are getting padded or something.
Right.
Because for him to get away with this,
well, he's a fucking mayor, man. Like, who's gonna
still?
That's part of it's got to be just be like, shit. Do we really want to like?
But these
pursue
are
this?
huge allegations.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, in 1927, he would marry Georgette, the one we talked about that he'd been dating.
Right.
And she was, like you said, the daughter of a wealthy butcher, and they would have a son a year later. Now we'll skip ahead a little bit to 1930. He was suspended for a short time because he was convicted of fraud.
Shocker.
For one of his many scams that he was running.
Right.
He was reinstated after 4 months. And then in 1931, he was removed as mayor for all the bad reputation that he had gained in this town for all the theft. Dude, he was known as mayor to like go to stores and like be walking around like talking to the shop owner and stuff, and then shit would just disappear. And then later he would like re-gift it to them, stuff that he stole from their like just blatant like theft. But like, who's gonna call the mayor out on
Marcel.
it? You know what I mean?
Just doing my part, sir.
Yeah. So it's just the dude's just so ballsy.
Oh man.
He had just an obsession with gathering stuff. He was known to be some of what, like, he's making all this money, right? And a lot of it supposedly was because he was an antique dealer. Like, he would go buy antiques and then resell them and all this stuff.
Anytime somebody says they're an antique dealer, that's bullshit.
Look sideways at him.
That's just the thing. Like,
skeptical hippo face.
If you're an antique dealer, please write it.
Who you killing?
Please message us. Like, there's no real antique dealers out there. I just don't see how you make a living doing that.
Antiques Roadshow.
That's different though.
If you're under the age of 70 and you're an antique dealer, I'm looking sideways at you.
Didn't Nicolas Cage and Matchstick Men? Isn't that what he told everybody?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't seen that.
I deal in antiques, and he had that tick.
Oh,
and he was like, I deal in antiques. Fucking open the door 3 times.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Dude, that movie's awesome. You need to watch it.
I haven't seen it.
Matchstick Man.
I mean, I'm a big Nick Cage guy.
Yeah, I know.
Local to Vegas.
Here.
Local to Vegas. Kind of weird.
Yeah.
I got a little story about Nick Cage. I actually went to Sports Chalet and ended up behind him in line.
I think you've told this story on the show
allegedly
before.
ended up behind him in line, and he was supposedly allegedly very weird. I was looking at the guy from behind. I'm like, this guy's kind of interesting. I didn't know it was him. I see like just dude gaudy rings all over his hands, like cheesy, like fake looking, like gold plated rings and stuff.
On every finger?
Yeah, like every finger, dude.
Whoa.
And I'm like, what's this guy's deal? And then I hear the voice. I'm like, dude, is that Nick Cage? And then I thought that in my head, and he turns and stares right through me for like a minute, just staring at me like he heard. I don't know if maybe I said, is that Nick Cage out loud or something? Just stared me down, dude. I'm like, this is awkward.
Yes, it is.
You know what he was buying?
Lorne.
You know what he was buying? Headgear and boxing gloves.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, dude, you don't need to be boxing at your age. This was only like a few years ago.
Oh wow.
Anyways, he's known around town. You know, he's an interesting cat. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he's allegedly blown all of his money from his movies. And
you think so?
He seems to like the image. I think he likes being a celebrity a little too much. I think he wanted me to like say something like, "Oh, can I get a picture?" or something like that. Maybe that's why he was staring at me. He knew I recognized him for sure.
Yeah. And you were like, "Nah, bro."
Yeah, that was kind of probably the weirdest celebrity run-in I've ever had was Nick Cage.
Wow. I can't wait to run into him. I hope I run into him somewhere.
Go up in Summerlin. That's where he lives. And
really?
Frequent like the Boca Park area. That's where I ran into him. When the Sports Chalet is closed now, but that's where I
go hang around there.
I've actually met 2 celebrities at that Sports Chalet. I also met Gray Maynard, the former UFC fighter.
Oh, okay.
Kind of a celebrity, kind of like a C-list, but
yeah,
I was a fan at the time. And I walked up to him. I'm not like one of those guys that likes to bother people.
Fangirl out.
But yeah, I walked to him like, "You're Gray Maynard," and he's like, "Yeah." And I like shook his hand, and I just kind of stood there and stared. I'm like, "All right."
All right,
did not know what else to say. Dude. It was so awkward. That's so strange. Nice guy though.
Can I get a postcard? I mean, a picture?
Right.
I mean,
oh man. Yeah, so let's get back on track here. So, where did the Nicolas Cage thing come from? What were we talking about?
Matchstick Men, because we were talking about antique dealers.
Oh, okay. So he was removed from mayor in 1931, but that didn't stop him from his political aspirations.
Yeah, there you go.
He then ran and won a seat on the city council, which was actually like made him like a member of Congress at the time in France, which is just insane.
It is insane.
But it didn't last long because this is the stupidest way to lose your seat. He got caught stealing power from the power company and was then removed basically, he was on a seat on Congress, and by stealing power, that made him to where if some law in France said that he could no longer vote, and if you could no longer vote, you couldn't sit in Congress.
Right.
And so he lost his position as his seat on the city council.
Oh, that was the last straw, huh?
Right. And so it seems like after that, his reputation was completely gone.
Yeah.
And then in 1933, he moves to Paris to escape his terrible reputation in that small town and starts anew as a doctor, where he began to use false records and credentials to attract patients. He quickly gains quite a rap sheet in Paris due to his kleptomania. He's arrested, institutionalized, and fined for crimes ranging from tax fraud to assault on a police officer. And by 1939, at the beginning of World War II, he had a pretty sketchy reputation in France as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Now we have to talk about what we've alluded to with German-occupied France. This is where it really kicks in. In 1940 is when the occupation of France had really became a thing.
Right.
We talked about Germany kind of steamrolling France during that time. This becomes terrible conditions for people living in France. Especially like the Jewish population, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, they were no longer able to have any positions of power.
Right.
And then it just got worse from there.
And there was a resistance, but it seemed like that caused a lot of harm as well. It just put more people in danger.
Yeah.
People associated with the resistance were obviously tortured or killed. So, yeah.
France would be forced to pay for the Nazi occupation as well. Not only did they have them basically running their cities, but they had to pay for all of their expenses to be there. And at a certain point, it was almost 60% of their national income was going to pay the Nazis for their own occupation in the city. France's elites all fled the city for the most part. Almost all of the elite population of French people fled the city early on, with ranking Gestapo agents and Germans occupying all of like the popular hotels. Like they just moved in.
Oh, yeah.
And took over, and like a lot of the mansions and stuff of the elite of the French people that fled were taken over and become like Nazi offices.
Right.
Yeah, it was insane.
And all the same trying to promote socialism. It's like you know what I mean? It was like labeled as that.
Right.
And that's the same way that Marcel thought. Like in his mind, that was socialism. Like you take what you want.
Yeah.
You know, it's everybody's.
Yeah.
Whatever, but that's
with the home values obviously plummeting due to this whole thing going on.
Yeah.
We talked about him being an opportunist.
Yeah.
Marcel would then start buying up properties at a bargain discount with him. You know, obviously all of his theft and his he's doing pretty well from his supposed antique sales, but he's really a drug dealer / doctor with all kinds of sketchy practices, and he'd gained some money doing that, and he started buying up properties when they were low.
Right.
And one of them, which would end up being his murder mansion.
Yeah.
He bought in 1941. He bought a house on 21 Rue Le Sueur. It was basically in the heart. This is where the real speculation comes in about this guy. Like this guy's like his own conspiracy in a sense, because still to this day, people argue whether he was a Nazi agent working undercover.
Yeah.
People argue whether he was. His argument later on was that he was a member of the resistance, and he was using this home, which would end up being a murder home, to kill Germans that he had captured, or people that were working with the Germans, French people that were, Nazi sympathizers and working with them as agents, double agents and whatnot. He bought this house, and it was right in the head, like this road that he bought it on, Rue Le Sueur, was known to be the road where like all of the Nazis were like doing their operations from. They owned almost all the homes on this fucking street.
Right. And because of his social class and like his standing and his education and stuff, he was kind of like in this middle ground.
Yeah.
Where he could have been any of them. It's like the Nazis aren't going to bother him. Mm-hmm. And the resistance, he could be part of it. He couldn't. It's like you know what I'm saying? Like he was French. He wasn't Jewish.
And he had no morals, so he was kind of prime pickings. A really smart guy with money and influence who had no morals, so he would ultimately be like the perfect French guy for the Germans to use as an agent, a double agent, to try and gain intel on people who were trying to defect or whatever like that.
Or at the very least, if they're not partnered, just leave him out there.
Right.
Just leave him out there and let him continue doing what he's doing, which is exactly what ends up happening. He keeps getting away with all this shit.
So he also purchased the house on 21 Rue Le Sueur the same week that a guy named Henry Lafont returned to Paris. This guy was a known local gangster in Paris before the war started, and then and he went away for a while. And then when he returned to Paris, he had become a Nazi agent. Mm-hmm. They had gotten to him and known his reputation, and they basically took him in and said that you're going to work for us, or or else type of thing. And so this guy returns to Paris the same week, and he was given money and permission to recruit new members for what was called the French Gestapo during the time, or the Carlingue. I don't know how to pronounce it, but you can look it up. The French Gestapo. This guy Lafont would end up being like the head of it at a certain point, and there's a lot of connections that later on become made between Henry Lafont and Marcel Patois. And a lot of people think that Patois and his house were being used to do Henry Lafont's bidding in many ways.
Didn't they actually become like friends?
Yes, they were friends.
They would go. They were seen at, like, getting coffee, and
people believe that they made their acquaintances, and then by this time in 1941, when he moves back and he's paid by the Germans to recruit people to take out, French defectors and all, and Jewish people and all this stuff, he was paid by Henry Lafont. People believe this, and that's what I believe.
You think so?
I believe he was working for Lafont. I think it's too ironic that he buys this house on 21 Rue Le Sueur, right in the heart of the Nazi occupation area, and Henry Lafont moved back to Paris that same week he bought that house.
Yeah.
And what he ends up doing in that house, it all makes too much sense.
It really does. It really does.
I ultimately think,
and with the right amount of money, it's a no-brainer for this guy.
That's kind of the case that the book makes, is that Marcel Patois was working for the French Gestapo. He wasn't a known member, but he was undercover working for them and doing their bidding in this horrific house. That it's a mansion. This house is crazy. You can look up photos and videos of it. 21 Rue Le Sueur. During the trial later on, he was actually taken to the house, and like the jurors were walked through it and let them see the different rooms, torture chambers. Shortly after he bought the house, he had some construction done to it. A la H.H. Holmes, had some special things installed into it. One of the things was a thick-walled triangular room, which was basically like concrete walls in it. Right. And it had hooks installed on the walls.
Wasn't that in a building that was separate from the house, though?
No, it was inside the house. It was like...
Are you sure?
Yeah, like where rooms met up. Yeah, you can look at the floor plans of his house. Anyways, there was like a triangle room that was installed, like an extra wall was put in that cut it off in a triangular fashion, and it was basically like a torture chamber.
Yeah.
And there was
completely airtight.
And later on found was like a little peephole camera. Not camera, but like a peephole that you could see into the room from the other room and observe what was going on in there.
Yeah, I'm guessing it was glass on it, because it said that was one of the main things, because he would gas people in there. So it had to be airtight. It couldn't leak to the rest of the house.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that hole could have been for just to let it out slowly, maybe.
The gas?
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll get to that more. We'll get to that more. His ways of killing and his claims for who he was killing and why he was killing and all this stuff after the house was discovered by authorities. So in 1942, he was convicted again, this time for overprescribing narcotics again. After that conviction, he began going by the alias Dr. Eugene. He claimed to have a way to smuggle Jews out of France to South America, or not even just Jews, but just anyone that wanted to defect.
Right.
Maybe Germans that didn't want to be a part of it. Anyone that wanted out during this time, he develops this system where he's using a barber shop, right? Wasn't he using like a barber shop as a front? He would have people that had like put feelers out there to look for defectors, and when he would have them then delivered like in a roundabout way through the city to where they kind of lose track of where they were, to this barber shop where they would meet with Le Sueur, and he would then arrange a whole system where he was gonna defect them out. He would explain how it would happen. He would tell them, "You've got to bring as much money as you can.
Yep.
You don't want to bring
all
any
your valuables.
You don't want to have any of your identification with you, because you don't want them to. We're going to give you a new name and whatnot. And you don't want them to discover.
Right.
So nothing with initials of your name, nothing with anything signifying you, which is all too convenient now.
And of course, you need
a
few vaccines. Going over there.
Yeah, they're saying in order to get into this new country, you have to have vaccinations. And looking at it, seems
this bullshit.
It's well. I mean, would you think you would know at the time, or
no, you
wouldn't? You wouldn't. You'd be so desperate that you'd be like, you would just believe everything he's saying, because you just want out of there so bad.
And this is the perfect weapon for the French Gestapo.
Yeah,
the perfect weapon, because even the Germans that he got, they were trying to defect, and in their eyes, they got what they deserved.
And also Henry Lafont, the guy who's running the French Gestapo at the time.
Yeah,
he's got guys that so he's basically running a gang.
Yeah.
And and basically, so like guys that would get on his bad side, like former members, anything like that, he would also send.
Oh yeah, they would come up missing.
He would also send to the murder house. And so it wasn't like, in the end, we'll talk about the body count and stuff in this house, but like there was a certain percentage that were Jewish people that just wanted to defect. There was a certain amount that were former members of the French Gestapo that had done Lafont wrong, and he wanted them gone.
Yeah. Have you met my friend Marcel?
Or
We'll meet him at his place tomorrow.
Right. But Petuot, he didn't discriminate. If someone had a lot of money and they put it out there that they wanted to defect, that was the perfect situation for him, because ultimately this was about gathering wealth. He was trying to collect their shit, ultimately. That's why he told them to bring as much money as they could. So this is people's life savings they're bringing.
Oh, he charged like 25,000 francs per refugee?
But it also varied depending on their wealth. Like, so if he knew they had more money, he would charge them more. He basically thought he would tell them to bring what he thought they could come up with.
But on average, I think he got like 25,000 per.
Up to like 50 or 100,000 francs and then he would also tell them to bring travel money, to bring their jewels and their goods.
So, it just sounds too good to be true, man.
Right.
For him, it's just the perfect scheme.
Right. We also have to talk about how he was once arrested by the Gestapo after they learned about his supposed organization. Now, this could all just be bullshit. They kept him captive, in his words, for about 8 months, where he says he was tortured because they believed he was a member of the revolution.
They could have just roughed him up a little bit for the,
Either that, or they had him in there and they were just planning out what he was doing, like telling him how to run his organization in this murder house.
They could have just put him in quote unquote solitary, and then no one would ever see him or know where he's at.
Right. And it also, on their front, it covers their ass in the sense that, we locked him up and we tortured him. And
we know what this guy's up to. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So they learned that, supposedly they learned that Marcel was not a spy and he was not working with any resistant groups, and he was released after spending 8 months in captivity. Now, we'll get to the discovery of the murder home, the murder castle, or the murder man. We'll go with the murder mansion.
Murder mansion.
January of 1944, a complaint was filed by the neighbors of 21 Rue Lassuer Avenue. A woman from her window, I believe, witnessed some smoke coming from a house, and it was kind of a regular occurrence. There's stinky smoke coming out of the mansion across the street, and there was weird comings and goings from that house. They would always see the same guy, which was Marcel.
More comings, less goings, really.
Right.
If we're honest.
Well, only Marcel going. More comings and then Marcel going.
Yeah.
They would notice him coming in, riding in on his bicycle, and then guests would come to the home and meet with him. And then he would ride away, and he had his bike with a cart that was attached to it, and the cart would have like a blanket over it with stuff in it.
Yeah.
They would notice like lots of like goods, like baggages coming and going. Even shipments being made, like trucks coming up and picking large shipments of suitcases and stuff.
Moving body-shaped lumps around.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Right. So January 44, the neighbors, she finally has enough with the smoke, the stinky smoke across the street and all the weird comings and goings. She convinces her husband to go over there and check it out. So he goes over there. He's knocking on the door. No one's coming to the door. Right. There's this smoke coming out of the house. So obviously they call the authorities.
Right.
And
because they think it's like a chimney fire.
Right.
Yeah, they think this place is like burning to the ground.
Right.
But then it was a regular occurrence. So, I've heard that too.
Well, that's still strange. Like, why is their chimney lit with like this stinky ass smoke coming out all the time, 24/7?
No, I mean, I get it. But if it's happening regularly and he's coming and going and it's still happening, which it was, I'm sure.
Right.
And the house is not burned down, wouldn't he know? I feel like they just got really curious and they just got really nosy.
Well, yeah, they saw how weird the comings and goings of this house were, and they just wanted to know what was going on. And so the Parisian police would respond, and after not being able to get anyone to respond to the door and seeing the smoke coming out, they would then call on the fire department to come out.
Right.
Who would then go through the door, get into the house, and discover just a complete house of horrors.
Oh, God.
The firemen entered the house and tracked the source of the smoke to a basement where a coal stove was burning hot and thick. A human arm was sticking out of the open door. You can see this stove. There's pictures of it on the internet. Mixed in with the coal heap were more human remains, bones, limbs, and other parts too small to be identified. When Petuot, so they knew that a doctor by the name of Marcel Petuot owned the home, and he had another residence.
Right.
So they called upon him, and he said that he would be on his way down. He'd be there in a matter of 15 minutes.
Right.
He didn't arrive within 15 minutes. They were waited way longer, and then that's when they finally went into the house.
Yeah.
And so they also, when patrol arrived, he explained that the remains were Germans, Nazi collaborators and other traitors, and that he was the head of a resistance group, and the Germans would have his head for this. This seemed good enough for the sergeant who let him go.
Okay.
So all these bodies, I mean, I know you can't recognize them, but they were definitely German Nazis. They were scumbags.
Germans.
Yeah, I mean,
look at them.
You want these guys alive?
Yeah, because they would have killed you, maybe. Well, I mean, would his story have been different though if the Gestapo had showed up?
Oh, dude, these are all Jews
and Hail Hitler and stuff.
Hail Hitler and stuff. They would totally buy that.
Yeah,
right. So yeah, they let the guy go, where they then don't capture him again for a long time. Let's just say that.
Right.
But this freaking home, it's you can't understate the creepiness of it. They discover the triangular room with the hooks on the walls and the thick walls that would be soundproof. They discover no poisons. Now that's a common misconception when we talked about, like, if you find articles that were written by people that actually used the book as a reference. There was no poisons found in the house.
Right.
There was a lot of morphine and different drugs that would sedate someone.
Right.
That's what was found in the home. But also found in the home was a gas or this stuff to create a hydrogen cyanide, which was what was used by the Germans to gas the Jews.
So yet another link to the Germans.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the Cyclone B. It wasn't the new upgraded version of that's what the Nazis were using in the showers.
Yeah.
But he had done his own homemade version, which was the same thing. He used like a bucket and like tablets or something.
Right. Pretty got the recipe from his buddy there.
And so the common belief of how he was murdering these people in this room was he would get them there. He would tell them he was going to give them a vaccination.
Right.
He would inject them with some sort of sedative, morphine or something like that, where they would get woozy, pass out. They would wake up chained to the wall. There was actually a guy that survived this, a guy that actually got injected, woke up chained to the wall and whatnot.
Holy shit.
And got out. I don't remember how he escaped, but he told this story well before Marcel was ever discovered. Like, this story was like folklore. Like, the guy knew what this guy was up to, probably too afraid to say anything. But anyways, his story was that he was injected with so-called vaccinations, which were actually a sedative, and he woke up chained to a wall in unbelievable pain. And so some people were saying that there was a button in this room that Marcel had installed a invisible needle, or like it was a tiny needle that when you push the button, it would inject you with some kind of a poison.
I don't know about all that.
Yeah,
shit.
I don't buy it.
He probably just walked in there. They're chained to the wall.
Well, no, he walked in there and he told him, I'm going to give you
I'm going to give you a vaccine.
Vaccine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they naturally complied. What other choice do they have?
Yeah.
They're in German, Nazi-occupied France. I mean, what are they going to do?
Right. And then so they would wake up chained to the wall, and that's when he would release the gas into the room. And it's not known whether he used the little peephole to watch them die because he got off on it, or if it was just a means of knowing whether the gas was clear and he could go back in.
Yeah.
And then
I think it was all the above.
Yeah. And then
maybe even to administer the gas in there.
I don't think he was a thrill killer. Honestly, I think he was more of a means to the end type of killer, where he wanted their shit. I think that's what it came down to.
He just wanted their shit.
Yeah, he was greedy, a greedy fuck.
Yep.
And he had no morals, so he didn't care about the killing. It didn't bother him, but I don't think he got off on it either.
And I think the gas chamber was just the quickest way to kill a bunch of people.
Right.
And not really get your hands dirty.
And also maybe a chance for him to practice his skills with a scalpel, because like we talked about, he was pretty skilled in that he could remove the person's face from chin to forehead with one cut, and it would be perfectly meticulously cut.
Right. And here's another theory that I didn't hear anything about, but maybe. A lot of the bodies were found, like skinned, as we said, but a lot of abdomens were found with no organs.
Right.
So you think maybe he
used the
these
sewer
organs on the black
No,
market,
he was
or some
supposedly
shit,
he was
maybe?
using there was like a sewer access at the property, and he would put the organs and the innards down in the sewer because that was an easier way to dispose of the body. If you have the innards, it's going to take way longer.
Yeah.
He was basically trying to dispose of, get to where the body was completely gone within that house. That's why he was using the stove. So he would cut them up, take the innards out, use the sewer to dispose of those, chop up anything identifying for them, like get rid of the fingerprints, that type of thing.
Right.
He would try to dissolve them in lime. He had bought a large sum of lime from a person who the investigator Commissaire Massou, who was the lead investigator, did a phenomenal job tracking down Marcel. By the way, that's a large portion of the book was spent talking about Commissaire Massou. and how great of an investigator he was for the time.
Right. You're right. And about the organs thing, that's all bullshit because the first transplant was in 1954. So.
Oh, okay. No, he was just disposing of them. It was just a means to get the least amount of rot and smell, probably.
Right. The more shit he can get out of the house and farther away, the better off.
So you get the innards out.
Burn the rest. He was incinerating the rest, right?
Dissolve the flesh and whatnot in lime, and then put the bones, crush up the bones, and put them in the incinerator. And he also had a 10-foot pit. There was they found 20 bodies in, or 20
at least.
I think it was 25 bodies they found in this pit, and that's where the lime was. So he would, I'm guessing, he would kill them, take the innards out, throw them in the pit to dissolve, then later take that stuff out and put it in the incinerator. Just horrific, man.
Now some of the stuff some things he kept, there were some body parts he kept.
Oh yeah, there was supposedly there was genitals in a jar. I don't know if that was for dramatic effect. Yeah, the old Dahmer.
Maybe. Yeah. He had some dick and noodle soup laying around. If you're not a patron, you don't know about that joke. But.
Right. So the police let him leave after showing up to the House of Horrors after they discovered everything.
Right.
They believe his bullshit excuse off the bat because they were French police and they hated the Nazi occupation and everything.
Absolutely.
And if you did believe him, he was probably, like we talked about how persuasive he could be and how charismatic and deceptive and clever he was. Maybe he was able to just wittingly convince them that he, these people were scumbags that he had killed. They were part of the problem, and any crime. There was actually a law at that time in France that said that if you were killing in the name of France, if it was for the greater good of France, that it wasn't even a misdemeanor or some shit.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So if he was able to convince the cops that those were Nazis that he was killing, then he's basically like Brad Pitt in Inglourious Bastards.
Nazi purge, motherfucker.
Right. Where's the bear Jew?
Where's the bear?
So he goes into hiding now, and this story blows up in the newspapers, and it's all that anybody can talk about. The murder home, the murder mansion is being everybody's there.
All these stories were bullshit, by the way. Everything was being published at that time.
Oh yeah, everybody's just speculating.
Yeah, they're just printing whatever the fuck they want.
Right, and there's crowds that are forming around the outside of the home.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of pressure on Commissaire Massoud to find this guy.
Yeah,
and he's interviewing everybody. One of the people he interviews tells him that they should check into this guy that Marcel drinks with at a bar, that he might know some stuff. They don't actually do their due diligence and follow up on it. Whereas if they had, they would have found him right away.
Yeah, because
he was hiding out at this guy's apartment that he would go drink with. Kind of the guy wasn't real wealthy. He had a little apartment.
Yeah.
And Marcel went to him and got him to he basically convinced that guy the same thing he convinced the police, that these guys, because the guy had heard what was going on in the news and that he was wanted, and he convinced that guy that he was working for the revolution and that he was they were all Nazis that he'd been killing in that house, and he hadn't done anything wrong. And so the guy lets him stay there. He grows out his beard. He's sitting around, not leaving the place. That's why he wasn't get caught for a long time. And he's just reading the news of what's going on.
Right.
While Massoud actually takes in his wife, Georgette, and has her being held and questioned. He has his brother, Maurice, is being held and questioned as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not known whether his wife knew about this stuff. She definitely knew that he kept bringing home a lot of goods, but he would convince her that was his patients not being able to pay and giving him this or that.
Right.
And a lot of his income on his account was explained by his successful trading in antiques. Like he would buy something for this many francs and then sell it for 10 times the amount of francs the next day.
And he was in politics, and he was a doctor.
Right.
So he had lots of outlets, I guess, to the naked eye.
Right. And so he's hiding out in this apartment, and eventually, after months of looking for him and the speculation getting out of control and the media frenzy, he actually, there's an article written about him that is just so horrific to him, and it says so many bad things about him that he actually feels like he has to respond. And so at this point, they'd actually it's been months that he's been on the run,
right.
And that the authorities are actually kind of assuming he's dead at this point, or that he's just fled the area so far that it's almost going to be impossible to find him. But his own ego has to defend himself, and so he sends in a long letter to the news to the newspaper that had written this terrible article about him, explaining himself and saying that he was a member of the resistance.
Yeah.
And that, what he was doing was in the name of France and all this stuff, and defending, completely denying everything that they had written about him.
Kind of BTK-ish, right? Right to the police.
His ego got the better
yourself.
of him.
Yeah.
His ego got the better of him because then that re-sparked the search for him. They figured that the fact that he was able to get that letter to the newspaper so fast, they wrote the article,
close.
and then later that day they get this letter from him. They're like, he's got to be in the area.
He actually just ran it down the street and threw it in the mailbox.
I was gonna say, this ain't 2018 where he could have wrote it from an email from Istanbul or some shit. He's not. They knew the dude's nearby.
Right.
He's still around here, so they re-sparked the search for him even harder. Like they're like, okay, we got to find this guy. He's around here somewhere.
He probably just posed as his own messenger boy and just walked in there.
Right.
These allegations are not true. Just throw it on the desk and walk away.
So he was finally identified at a Paris metro station and arrested. It was on October 31st, 1944. Among his possessions were a pistol, 31,700 francs, and 50 sets of identity documents. So probably on his way to flee.
Right.
You would assume if he's at a terminal.
50. When you say 50 sets, you mean 50 different aliases?
50 sets of identity documents. So I don't know if they were his identity documents or for other, maybe his victims. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
What was going on? Maybe just different aliases.
Because I know he was going by a lot of different aliases at this
time. Different aliases that he was going to go by is what I would say.
Okay. Yeah, there was some.
He had connections to make fake papers and all that stuff. That's what he'd been doing with all the victims. He would show them. He would quickly flash them here's your new identification papers, but he wouldn't let them take them because they were kind of suspect.
Kind of an interesting little folk tale, maybe. We're not really sure if this is true, but one of his aliases, he went by Henry Valerie.
Yeah, right. He was supposedly working with the resistance organization.
Yeah, and looking for Marcel Patois. Apparently, he was assigned to find himself.
Right. And when the search started anew, after he wrote that whole letter, they started looking for him under that name, and that's when they quickly found him.
Yeah. Now we couldn't really. That wasn't in the book, and can't really find a whole lot to back that up. But it's just a fun little folk tale in there. I don't know.
Right. So the trial that would ensue was just a freaking complete circus. I mean, he would end up standing trial for 27 counts of murder. Because that was the people that they were able to actually link to him. The amount of bodies they found, and then the people that are missing, everything. Yeah. The ones that they felt that they could actually try him for, that they had enough evidence on, was 27. Although he claimed after being captured in interrogations and stuff that he had killed 63 people or somewhere in the 60s. Right. But they were all Nazis or they were all German sympathizers or collaborators, that he would take them out. He would basically, what he said is that he would go to known German headquarters, and him and some of his resistance fighters would wait in a vehicle outside the place, wait for people to leave the German building and start walking. They would follow them. When they were secluded, they would grab them, throw them in the van, and then they would van or whatever. I don't know if there was vans, whatever vehicle they were in.
Throw them in the creep van.
Yeah. Come on now. They would throw them in whatever vehicle they had, take them into the woods and execute them. That's what he claimed, 60-something people that he would kill, Germans and collaborators.
But how do you explain killing the 20-something in your house in the middle of a German district? I just don't. It just doesn't compute.
Right.
If everyone around you is German, you live in a German neighborhood, and then Germans are going to see other Germans going in your house and never coming out.
Right.
If they're watching your house enough to see the smoke coming from the chimney every day.
Right.
I don't know. It just doesn't add up, man.
One thing we forgot to mention about the murder house and the way he would kill these people and stuff is the postcards. It's very creepy.
Oh, yes.
Very creepy. And it was also a way of him recruiting new people to kill,
like
rich family members of these people. So he would get someone who would want to defect. They would come to him, blah, blah, blah. And he would inject them with the so-called antibiotics or whatever.
Right.
Vaccine.
Yeah.
Subduing them. When he would inject them with the sedatives, they would be all groggy, and that's when he would have them write a note, or he would have them write on note cards to their family, saying that they had gotten out, that they were now in whatever Switzerland or where was the country they said.
I think they were going to South America, right?
Wherever he was. I think it was different in each case. He would supposedly send them to safe areas, and he would have them write a letter to their family very John Jones or Jim Jones-esque again.
Yep.
But
telling them that not to contact, like it won't be safe if you contact me. Like,
right.
Don't try
but
to
come
reach
as
out.
soon as you can.
Yeah.
Come meet me as soon as you can.
Yeah.
And that was another way for him to, so he would get these cards to the family members. Basically, hopefully he was hoping to convince them to come along.
Absolutely.
And then he could kill them and take their stuff too. But the family members noted that he would always have them sign their full name at the bottom, which was random, kind of like very Jim Jones at the same time. Like it's stuff about the letter that just wasn't quite right, and also that it was very like sloppy
because they were about to pass out.
They were drugged up. Yeah, so the note cards was an interesting thing that we felt we had to bring up.
You're right, man. He did it all for the goods and money.
Oh, 100%.
Did it all for the money.
Yeah, bloody benders.
But then again, what about the stuff as a child though? The torture and stuff. He obviously got off on some of that, like the torturing animals and stuff.
Yeah,
I feel like that's just what numbed him to it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That in war would numb you to killing too.
Yeah.
Big time. Seeing just bodies everywhere, just every day, living in trenches.
His mental predisposition and then also the war. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we talked about the trial being a circus. The public could just go and watch the trial, and it became like the fun thing to do for local Parisians.
Hey man, you trying to trial and chill?
Right. Well, because he made it so entertaining. Marcel would have these banter back and forth with the prosecutors.
Yeah, very Ted Bundy-esque.
Very Ted Bundy-esque, but better.
Kinda
Or
supporting
like, Bundy
himself.
was kind of a joke in trial, in my opinion. Like he was kind of making an ass of himself. He
he
thought he
was
was a lot
buried.
smarter than he was.
He was buried though with the evidence,
and he
shit.
just he would more just it was about him like looking like a lawyer than actually doing things as a lawyer. Marcel would make good
How
arguments.
dare you?
Marcel would make good arguments and get the crowd fired up, and they were actually like he became kind of a celebrity for a little bit there. Like he would say things and the crowd would outburst. Like he was trying to convince them that he was doing this all for France and he was killing Germans and whatnot.
Well, you're talking about a guy that was mayor at 30, so I mean, obviously he knew how to sway people, sway the masses. He knew what they wanted to hear.
Right. But one of the things that the prosecutors would do, which was smart, is they would bring in members of the resistance to question Marcel on his prowess as a resistance member. Ooh. They would actually ask him like, how do you make a plastic explosive? Like anybody in the resistance would know how to do this, and he wouldn't answer it because he knew he didn't have an answer. And these kind of things really started to damage his reputation. Ooh. And people started seeing like, okay, this guy's full of shit.
Right.
And then he would have sudden outbursts against people like, what are you, a Jew sympathizer? Like this type
Show me how you cut a swastika in this man's head.
Right. Yeah. So in the end, like he the people, like the longer the trial went on, it became apparent that the people were there to watch a circus, but they knew he was a madman and that he was guilty.
Yeah.
At one point, there's an interesting note from the trial. The prosecuting attorney made note that life is precious, talking about the victims, and the crowd actually kind of burst into laughter because of what they'd been living through. You know what I mean? Like life is precious. Like France has been completely destroyed. Like millions of people have been dead through war.
Oh God, that's so sad.
Yeah, it's sad. It's just kind of like an insight into how people thought then, which is kind of crazy that he still got convicted of all these murders when people just looked at life that way at the time.
Yeah, like it was just helpless.
Right.
Wow.
Another thing during the trial we kind of alluded to is that they decided to take the jury. And I think they members of just the community that wanted to go view the house, and it was part of the trial to bring Marcel to the murder mansion.
Marcel was probably charging price of admission. He was probably like,
right.
I'm still getting money, bitches.
You know what's creepy though? It's very creepy, and you can kind of imagine how creepy this would be. Is when they went there was no electricity on because obviously no one had been living there. They didn't pay to have the electricity turned on at the house, so they had to walk through this place by candlelight. Oh. And they actually had they went into groups. They cut into groups because not everybody from the jury could fit into the little triangular torture room. And so they had to take turns going in there. And at one point, one of the groups, the candle went out, and they were just in the dark in this fucking place where people were killed. Yeah. So,
oh my God.
Yeah. So if you can imagine being able to walk around in there did not play well for him. Seeing how creepy this house was. And he tried to explain that the room, the torture room was supposedly a radiation room for his studies. This was all going to be his medical facility type of thing. It's he had to wait till after the war to get the proper stuff and all this bullshit. And it's what's with the hooks on the wall, bro?
Yeah, what's with the hooks?
Yeah, come on.
What's with the rotting flesh in the pit, bro? Come on.
Right, yeah, the lime pit, man, with all the bodies, it's kind of far.
The triangle room, okay, maybe you like weird shapes, I don't know. But the bodies in the pit, man.
Right.
The hand hanging out of the stove, I just don't think we can do.
Yeah.
Not gonna be able to curb this in your favor, bro.
Yeah. So when it was all said and done, he would end up being convicted of 26 of the 27 murders. The only one he got off on, I think, was like a real young child, where the body was found by there was a body that was found by that river we talked about, but that they weren't able to identify the body.
Right.
But there was a set of child's pajamas with his initials on it in the home that was found. There was so much evidence in court during the trial. There was so many suitcases that they said that it looked like.
I noticed
it looked like a terminal, like a bus terminal with like everyone's shit just stacked up. There were so many suitcases. He had acquired so much stuff, and he was keeping it all in the attic of a friend's house. And he would periodically, I think it was a family member, I think it was his brother's house. He was keeping all of those suitcases in the attic.
Yeah.
And they went up and found them all, and they became police evidence.
There's a picture of that. If you Google it, it's pretty interesting.
All the suitcases in the courtroom
stacked up. Yeah, it's like a wall of suitcases.
There's a lot of courtroom photos of the trial that are pretty fascinating. Yeah, man, it's crazy. I don't know what else to say.
It's crazy how many things were initialed back in the day.
Yeah,
like they initialed everything.
Right.
22 initial toothbrushes.
I feel like it's underutilized in this day. I'd like some shit with my initials on it.
They're coming back. They got the monograms, you know.
Yeah.
It's more of I think it's more of like a girl thing, you know. They have like a monogram on the back of the car or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you want some butt flap pajamas? It just says has LORNE on there.
Yeah. So, like we mentioned, 26 of the 27 he was guilty of, and he was sentenced to capital punishment. He would be sentenced to death by guillotine. And so leading up to that, they did it a little quicker back then. He wasn't a Randy Kraft type situation where he would sit on death row for years and years.
Right.
He would end up, his scheduled date would be May 25th of 1945 that he'd be beheaded. It was kind of interesting facts about the guillotine and all that whole process in the book. That was pretty cool how they would really like worked it out to where it was like a perfect system. The guillotine was like they designed it, like they changed the designs over the years, like it didn't work as effective this way. And
they angled that blade, man.
And it's kind of crazy that the head would like roll into a wicker basket. That just little fact, little snippet kind of weirded me out.
Why?
I don't know. It's just weird.
You're just gonna let it roll around on the ground. What if it rolls down to the crowd, man? That's not good. That's
not
good press.
It's just so
that's not good
convenient
press.
that it just rolls into a wicker basket and you just pick it up. All right, here's his head.
Yeah, you put the top on it.
Right.
Hey, carry this out back, man.
When asked on the day of his execution, well, they asked if he had any last requests, and he asked if he could write a letter to his family. Mm-hmm. He then wrote, it took 20 minutes. Some people would take up to like 4 hours to write their letter to the family, just buying time. He said probably it took 20 minutes for him to write his letter to his family. He was very, very calm. Like they said, abnormally calm, that he totally accepted it. Like at one point he got up to go to the bathroom right before, and he was kind of like casually walking around like whistling like he was going to a doctor appointment or something. Just
wow.
Yeah, came right back, right? And they asked any last words, and he said, "I'm a traveler who is taking his taking all of his baggage with him. That's all I have to say."
You're not taking anything with you, bro.
All right.
Sorry. All that shit you collected, suitcase wall.
Yep.
Not going to fit in the grave, man.
Yep. So he was head was taken, and that's that.
Peter Curtin style.
Yeah.
His last words weren't as cool as Peter Curtin's.
Fuck no.
But yeah, so that's him.
Yeah.
It's him
killing. We hope you guys enjoyed Dr. Satan.
Dr. Satan.
Marcel Patois.
Yeah.
Patois.
I think it's Patois, man.
Whatever, man.
It's Patois. Just as Peto. Say it like all the different ways.
We hope you guys enjoyed it. That was one of the funner ones to study for me. That guy was fascinating. Very fascinating. I didn't know about him, and I think most of you guys probably didn't know about him. He kind of flies under the radar, and it's because most of the stuff you can study is in French.
Like I was about to say, it's just a language barrier.
No documentaries in English. Language barrier, but that book is great if you want to learn more.
It is the book on him.
It is.
Like honestly, I looked for some other ones, and there are some other ones, but as far as using the exact police transcripts and doing interviews and things like this guy did his homework.
Right.
Like it's a very good book. And that's what is it?
Death in the City of Light.
Yeah.
The Serial Killer of Nazi-Occupied Paris by David King.
Right. Great book. It's a great book as far as, I mean, there are some parts that are hard to get through, like we alluded to, and then like the chapters, like, you know, you got different things in the story going on, and then as goes between chapter to chapter, it just jumps back to that other story. So you got to kind of pay attention to names and stuff. Like I found myself rewinding quite a bit, but overall, you know, taking in a lot of good information, I think, from it. It's no American Kingpin or whatever, but it's a good book.
Right. It's no
what's that? Richard Ramirez one, Night Stalker.
Night Stalker by Philip Carlo. I recommend that one to everyone. When they hit us up on Twitter or something asking for a book, I'm like, dude, Night Stalker by Philip Carlo that's like the book. And then obviously the Panzram book. What was that called? Panzram? Was it just called Panzram or?
I think it was. I think it had Panzram in it. If you search it, you'll see it. It's like the main book on Panzram. It's got great reviews.
Right.
It was extremely good as well. What was the case we just did? Didn't we really like the book?
Well, yeah, Road to Jonestown was one of my favorites.
Oh, that one was good.
God, that was an amazing book.
No, the Jose Vagoa one.
Yeah, Storming Las Vegas was fucking incredible.
By John Huddy. That is one of my favorite
American
books.
Kingpin was the Silk Road one that was amazing. We're just looking through our books that we've read during the show. Like Monster, The Inside the Mind of Aileen Wuornos. That one was really good.
Right.
Yeah, we've read a lot of great books on this podcast. It's one of my favorite things about doing this podcast is that we do that.
I agree.
Now, do you want to talk about our newest sponsor, our newest friend of the podcast? They reached out to us, and we're very happy to work with them, True Crime Magazine.
Absolutely.
Exclusively for True Crime Guys fans, the Creepers, today's episode sponsor, True Crime Magazine, is giving away 100 two-year subscriptions for only $20. That's a $100+ value. Yes, you heard that right, and the offer gets better and better. For the next 48 hours, they're slipping 2 more best-selling true crime publications worth $139.99 into all Ultimate bundles with little to no additional cost. Head over to thecrimemag.com/special to learn more. That's thecrimemag.com/special. Now, we're excited to work with them, man. True Crime Magazine is legit.
We are, yeah.
I'm sure you guys have heard about them.
It's great press for us.
The True Crime e-magazine is the world's leading publication devoted to true crime, serial killers, and criminal minds. So go check them out. They're supporting us, so you guys should support them. And let's do some shout-outs.
Yeah, absolutely.
iTunes reviews?
Yeah, all right.
You got this.
We got a few new ones.
All right.
Hey, look at that. Hey, and they're all 5 stars.
I'm disappointed in you guys. No.
I'm really disappointed.
No, we love it. Please.
We need a 1star in there just to keep us down
just
to
to talk some shit.
Right?
No. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to go write these reviews, man. We're fast approaching 500. I can't believe it. I never thought
it's incredible.
I never thought I'd be a part of a podcast that gets 500 iTunes. That's like a lot. If you go look around, like unless you're like one of the famous ones, that's a good amount of iTunes.
That's a really, lot for. Yeah,
I can't believe we have 500 listeners, let alone 500 people that are willing to go and review us on iTunes.
That's
not including the reviews from like Stitcher and all that stuff. Yeah, we're very thankful for you guys to do this, and so let's read the latest ones and give them some props for it.
Right. So these are the reviews from from our last episode. Yeah. Darren Ray rated us 5 stars. Hey man, thanks for blowing us up on social media too. I don't know if you've noticed a lot. Oh yeah, he's on Twitter and Facebook. Like he shares a lot, promotes the show. We really appreciate that, Darren.
Yeah.
JL Walls 00 5 stars. Jeshua Tex, thank you. Rizzle Crack left a 5-star review and also wanted us to give a shout out to his band Barber Floyd out of Fort Lauderdale. So go check them out. Barber Floyd, spelt like normal. BARBER Floyd FLOYD.
Check them out. I don't know if he didn't say if they're on iTunes.
Hey, you pull them up while I'm doing this.
All right, I'll pull up some Barber Floyd. Maybe they're on YouTube.
All right, see if you can find something.
Okay.
All right, and L. Greer left us a 5-star review. So just found these guys a week ago. I'm currently working on binging all the episodes. We appreciate that. Like their chemistry. Yeah, we fake it well on here. Let's see. Holly SSK just left us a 5-star review. Said she was turned on to us by her daughter. Oh, that's cool. That's pretty cool. It's good to hear like families that can listen. I just recently found out that one of my uncles back home listens, and I was kind of surprised at that. But it's really cool. He hits me up with like little questions and insiders from the show.
Yeah, that shit's always crazy.
And I have to respond because he's family. I can't just brush him off. Ugh, so annoying.
Okay, I found their Bandcamp. I wonder if it's if it's a Nirvana thing because Nirvana has a song called Floyd the Barber.
Maybe.
But should we play some? I don't know if he's giving us permission.
This is Barber Floyd out of Fort Lauderdale.
All right, Screaming Sun, an EP. We're going to play a little bit, not through the microphones, but off the computer.
Hell yeah. Yeah, did you expect this kind of a shout-out? This is how we do shout-outs.
Right. We should play it over the rest of the shout-outs. Keep going.
Just leave it. See, I want to do a special mention for Kai2115606. This is our Podbean defender.
Oh, dude, we've got a Podbean army. If you talk shit on Podbean,
listen, I don't even have to do anything anymore.
Right?
I sign on there and I'm like, damn, all these people are freaking.
Dude, it's like a forum when you go on Podbean comments now.
It's like Reddit.
Dude,
Listen, you go in there talking shit about us, and there's people who
we don't even have to defend
talk
ourselves
shit
anymore,
for us.
dude.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
that's what I'm saying. I don't even have to keep up with people anymore.
Right. So yeah, big shout out to Kai. Thanks.
Yeah, and also Tom Aris on Facebook. Just for the hell of it, dude. I just felt like I wanted to give you a shout out. So that's what I did. He commented on one of the posts and said that he's binged all our episodes. He's listened to them like twice.
Yeah.
And he's tried to find something else in the meantime while we're being lazy asses and taking weeks off. And he can't find anything to match us, which is crazy to me because there's like a shit ton of better podcasts out there. But it's cool. But I think it's like we've talked about this before. Like when you find like the first podcast you find that you like in a genre kind of defines that genre for you.
Yes.
That makes sense?
It's like your first love. It's like they always hold a special place.
Right. So like if you came into true crime listening to our show and you like the format,
right,
and other shows that don't have our format are going to seem not
like
as
it's
good,
not done
but that's
right.
not true. That's definitely not true. It's just like,
why don't they do it like the true crime guys?
Right, exactly. Just like comedy podcasts, you find one that you really like, and then you listen to somebody else, and you're like, oh, I just don't like the format. They're not that funny.
Just keep giving them a try, though. Sometimes, like, you know
that's
how,
right.
like,
That's right.
Say your favorite band puts out a new album, and you're like, I don't know. Like, but then you listen to, second time, you're like, yeah. And then, like 5 times in, you're like, okay, this is incredible. This is exactly what I expected.
Sometimes it takes a little bit to get to know the person, know their personality, see where they're coming from.
Right.
It's very rare that our first. I know a lot of people like to be like, oh, my first impressions are always spot on. Are they really, though? Because I think you only think they're spot on because you didn't know that person any deeper than that.
Right.
So, like, that's all you know of that person. So, of course, everything you know, the conclusion you come to is going to
God help us with
the
first impressions if this first episode you listen to is me talking about my grandmother's refrigerator fart.
Yeah, writing that down for some reason. You wanted to document it in your grandma's fart fridge. But
do you want to give Kristen a shout out for the new design that she sent over that we've used in Redbubble now?
Yes. Oh, let's make the sticker announcement too.
Yeah.
So Kristen Gulbranson, she makes a lot of our designs, and she's pretty incredible. And we just put a new one on the Redbubble store.
Creep of the crop creeper.
She definitely, without a doubt. And we just put up a new design that she drew up for us on the Redbubble store. It's called the I'm a Creeper design, and it's like a heart with headphones on it. It's really cool, and it says True Crime Guys in the headphones.
She should really be on the payroll at this point.
And then it says I'm a Creeper with like the cord of the headphones on the heart with a little knife in the heart. Like it's really cool.
And so it's now available in our Redbubble store. You can buy merch with it, and we're going to be doing a giveaway on Patreon, patreon.com/truecrimeguys.
We're going to give away a travel mug with that logo on it.
Yep. On the 2nd, it will be when we record the episode. It'll be posted on the 3rd or the 4th.
Right. These will always be around the first of the month, guys. These giveaways will.
So if you join Patreon within the next week or two, within the next week,
right,
you'll be put into that drawing.
Absolutely.
To potentially win a travel mug with any design you want. I mean, it could be that new one that Kristen made, or it can be some, the whatever. Let's go do cold shit, or it could be, the original Creep Van design.
Right. And that'll be every month. We're giving away something on Patreon.
We've already given away a hoodie. We gave away
a clock. Yeah. And this is our 3rd month. We started in December.
Right.
Merry Christmas.
Give them back. Then for $2 a month, you get all of those fucking episodes. You get John Wayne Gacy and
Dahmer, Ruby Ridge,
all
kinds of good stuff. Tookie
Ridgeway,
Williams. Yeah, there's a lot of good ones on there.
We just did Jim Jones. It was almost 3 hours long.
That's a fun one.
That one was one of my favorites, 100% one of my favorites.
Oh, real quick, back to the stickers. So if you guys, we're ordering like a few of these I'm a Creeper stickers just to see kind of how they look, and we might give a few of those away. But we think we're going to make those our
donation stickers.
Our donation sticker from now on. So
if you don't know what donation sticker means, we've done a thing for a long time now where if you go to our website, truecrimeguys.com, and you click, there's a little tab. It should be at the top that says stickers. Click on that. And then there's a link for our PayPal. You just donate a few bucks, and your address should be attached when you donate.
Right.
And then I personally send you a little letter with stickers, and so this will be yet another design that we could send. Right. And most people, they just donate a few bucks, and then I send them some stickers with a personal note and everything.
And so here's the catch. But in bringing these stickers in, we can't just keep buying all of the sticker designs that we have. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of weed out the Creep Van. And
if you want a Creep Van sticker, get it now.
And let's go do cult shit. Like, we still have a lot of those left, but we're just going to kind of, if you want those, if you donate, request, we'll obviously send those out to you, but we're going to move on to the I'm a Creeper sticker. And then once the other ones are gone, they're gone. They're OGs.
Yeah.
True creepers. That'll be like your badge. Be like, I got one of these fucking old school creeper
Right,
things.
the OGs.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's still the gold ones for the $5 Patreon
Creep
members.
Fan. Oh yeah, if you're not a $5 above, you can't get one of those. But
Right, those are fucking,
we have to.
Those are gold, man.
We have to stay to that standard.
Those
we
are
have
gold.
to. Right.
Yeah. So next week will be a Patreon exclusive episode. No free episode, guys, for the freeloaders. So if you want to listen next week, we're doing BTK by popular demand. We've gotten that one freaking suggested so many times,
Yeah.
and
I was
it's
kind of surprised because I feel like people know so much about BTK,
but they're just obsessed with the guy, which is
I
probably
guess
what he
so.
wanted, I would think, just from what little bit I know. I haven't
Yeah.
dove deep into him yet, but I feel like he was a attention whore.
Definitely.
So that's probably part of why we didn't want to do it for so long. 'Cause we don't like those guys
We
that
don't-
like
we
wanted to
don't
be known. We like the guys like Dahmer that just couldn't help themselves and they
Yeah.
became what they became against their own, best
right.
interests.
They wanted to hide in the shadows, but
Right.
society pulled them out.
Right. Those are the ones that fascinate me more. But we'll see how interested in BTK. We're gonna probably find a couple of books. One we'll probably study since he's got so many resources available.
yeah.
We'll probably both get different books and have
we're gonna
different
be bringing
resources.
some crazy shit to you for that for sure.
Yeah. So look forward to that next week. And you got anything last? I mean, we've been bullshitting for a while here.
I know, right? I think that's pretty much all the announcements. I can go to Patreon. If you do want to sign up for Patreon, it's patreon.com/True Crime Guys.
You get all kinds of stuff. And I think we're going to talk to another patron here after this episode wraps up. And
Yeah.
that'll be another bonus recording. We did one with Pretty Boy
Ali.
Ali.
Yeah, that recording's on there.
Yeah, that was great talking to him. It's cool to actually talk to a listener, man. It's weird.
It is. It is very cool.
Yeah.
It's like they're real people too.
Yeah.
Check them out.
All you weirdos, listen to this right now. No, you guys are great. All right. Keep creeping. See you guys next time.
All right, keep creeping, guys.